What motivates you both to make this argument?
An individual's mindset is probably the single most important tool they have to solving problems and creating a better world. And our inherent mindset that we evolved over 100,000 years is one of fear and scarcity. But that doesn't put you in a very good position to solve problems. Having an abundance mindset, an optimistic mindset, is probably the most important thing for delivering a future for our children that is better than our past.
We've been living through one of the most atypical periods in human history, and a lot of us have drawn linear forecasts as to where that takes us. That's never been true, and it's not true now. We're entering a period of extreme change, and my goal is to get people to understand the size of the icebergs ahead of us and where they are so we can navigate around them. The future isn't necessarily dark, but that doesn't mean it's going to be anything we can predict.
Exponential technologies, and I define those as computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, AR, VR, blockchain, biotech, are technologies that are making those things that used to be scarce more and more abundant. We're living in a world where technology is transforming scarcity into abundance at an extraordinary rate. Everything that we used to view as scarce, access to food, water, energy, healthcare, education, is blossoming. Now, to be clear, we are living during a time that is chaotic and unpredictable and sometimes downright scary. I don't deny that at all. We humans like going to sleep and waking up in the morning knowing that the world is the same as it was the night before, and it's not. It's changing at an accelerating rate. And we're not arguing that there are issues. There will be issues, for sure. But even as it's changing at this accelerating rate, what is happening is those things that used to be scarce are becoming abundant. If we look at this, and I believe in what's called data-driven optimism, there is a huge amount of data that drives towards this vision that abundance is, in fact, the future. So first of all, global life expectancy has more than doubled over the last 70 years, from roughly 40 years old to now hitting 75. Global child mortality has precipitously dropped from 43% in the 1800s down to under 4% today. Maternal mortality rates, women dying in pregnancy, over the last 20 years alone has dropped 34%, right? Cancer deaths have reduced by a third over the last 20 years. You may not believe this, but even democracy has blossomed over the last century. In 1900, about 1% of countries had universal voting rights. Today, it's 96%. Right? Extreme poverty has plummeted from 95% extreme poverty in the world down to under 10% today. Literacy rates have skyrocketed. Mobile phone uses, we have some 8 billion mobile phones. The poorest on the planet now have the most advanced technology for communications and access to knowledge. 5 billion internet-connected individuals. Access to electricity has exploded. We have water safety. We have more access to food. And so the question is, why is this happening? Why are we seeing this incredible abundance and access that people have? And it's not that we humans have gotten smarter. We don't have better forms of government or better politicians. It is the technology. Technology is a resource liberating force. It transforms scarcity into abundance over and over again, right? We used to go kill whales to get whale oil to light our nights. Then we ravaged mountainsides. Then we drilled kilometers under the ground to get access to oil. And now we have 8,000 times more energy hitting the surface of the Earth from the sun than we consume as a species in a year. Energy will become squanderable abundance, right? And that tips water and that tips health. And so all of these things are increasing abundance. It's not about creating a world of luxury for everybody, but it's about creating a world of possibility for everybody.
Peter D is absolutely correct. The world of the last 75, 80 years has gotten better and better and better and better, but it's important to understand why we've been able to go down this technological path. We've had three things going on. First of all, we had globalization. At the end of World War II, the Americans found themselves facing off against Stalin on the plains of Europe, and it was a war we knew we could not win. We knew we needed tens of millions of people to stand not behind us or with us, but in front of us to serve as cannon fodder. And that meant bribing them. And our bribe was globalization. We used our Navy to open the seas so that anyone could go anywhere and interface with any partner and access any commodity and any product and sell into any market if in exchange you would join us against the Soviets. And it worked. And it generated the greatest prosperity and security the world has ever seen. But the Cold War ended in 92. And ever since then, the United States, in a series of ever more nationalist political contests, has elected the guy who wants to do away with it faster. And the biggest difference between Trump and Biden when it comes to international economics is that Biden was able to hire a grammar checker. The road hasn't changed, and this is a very strongly bipartisan issue, and we're moving away from the generations of security and economic growth that gave us the ability to go down this technological path. Then there's demographics. Pre-Stalin, we all lived on farms where kids were free labor, so you'd have as many of them as you could put up with, plus one, because that's how you found out it was too many. But then Stalin brought us globalization and industrialization and urbanization, and all the new industrial jobs were in town, so we moved in to take them. Well, in town, kids aren't free labor. They're just a source of migraine. So you just fast forward 30 years to the 70s to the 90s, and we entered this weird period where we had huge numbers of young workers and huge amounts of consumption because of it, but not a lot of kids that we had to spend money on. It was, demographically speaking, a moment in time. You fast forward another 20 years to the 2000s and the 2010s, and we now have lots of mature workers who are over 40 but not yet retired. People were at the height of their income, but their expenses were under control. So we saw a huge tax base, huge infrastructure spending, lots of production, lots of investment, which generated, among other things, the tech boom that brought us the world we're in now. But this too is only a moment in time. And in the 2020s, we're now aging out. Whether it's Spain or Italy or Germany or Japan or Korea or Taiwan or China or Thailand, this is the end of the road because that bulge now hits mass retirement. And we have to come up with something that works without investment or consumption or production. And we're not going to get that right on our first try. And then finally, there's China. China is a country that exists because of globalization and demographic change. It's utterly dependent upon globalization for access to raw materials and access to markets. But it's also the fastest urbanizing country in history, which means it's the fastest aging population in history. And they've already aged so quickly and so far that consumption-led growth or cost-competitive production is already faded into memory. Their birth rate fell by more in the last 6 years than it did among European Jews during the Holocaust. So even repopulation is now statistically impossible, and China will cease to exist as a unified, industrialized political economy within 10 years. Major shifts in economic models take at least a couple of decades, and they are messy. The shift from imperialism to globalization, for example, took the better part of 5 decades and gave us 2 world wars and the Great Depression. So no, abundance is not the word that I would use to describe the future. We've passed that already.